All right, number 4. Processes and lists. This is a big deal. This is a huge deal, and I'm sure anyone who has a dyslexic kid can tell you that what do I do next? Or, okay, I'm done with that, now what? Or just not doing what they've been asked to do happens a lot. And I know that sounds like a general kid thing, but this is next level. I'll tell you a story. When I was young, and my mom tells the story all the time, when we talk about, when I come and I say, the kids just don't get things done. And she will tell the story about how for many years, and this was as an older kid, this wasn't, toddler-ish years. This was as an older kid. She would send me to my room to clean up my room. Everybody was cleaning their room. I would go into my room, and she would come in a half an hour later, and I'd still be just sitting there. And she would say, you didn't clean anything up. And I would say, well, I didn't know what to do. And so over a series of times of her sending me to my room and her coming back and saying, wait, nothing got done. And me saying, I didn't know what to do. And not just being a kid that just said, well, I didn't know what to do, so I just sat here. It wasn't that. It was what should I do? She would start to write me a list. And I think it started that she would give me something to do, and then I would come back when I was done. So she'd say, go pick up your dirty clothes. So I'd pick up my dirty clothes, and then I'd put them in the hamper, and then I'd come say, now what? And then she'd send me back, and I would pick up my toys. So I'd pick up all the toys, and then I'd go back, now what? Now make your bed. Now. And she would go until I had gotten my room clean. And so she began to write a list for me of things she wanted me to do. And that, it went on to everything else. When you get home, you need to, from school, you need to this, and this, and this. So fast forward, I have a gaggle of dyslexic kids now, and I know from the get-go that once we saw the signs, when my oldest was very young, he had a couple other sensory integration issues and stuff. So there was a lot of different signs that I really couldn't put my finger on, but I could see the dyslexic signs kind of blaring at me, but there was other things mixed in that I didn't have. And I would call my mom and say, did I do this? Did I do this? And she'd say, no. So we had to get that other portion diagnosed, but then it just became 2 things that we were dealing with. So I knew from the very beginning that we were gonna have to create lists, that the daily tasks became a list. And that started with things like, I would write a list and I would say, now go do that and come back. And so then I would cross it off and say, okay, now go do this. Because I have 4 children and they're all about 2 years apart. So managing a bunch of dyslexic kids who can't keep a series of orders in their head was a lot. So I had a list of things I was telling people to do. And still to this day, as an adult dyslexic, this is something that I deal with on a very large scale. I still find myself during the day, not just doing that mom thing where you walk in the laundry room and you're like, why am I in here? But more like, I'll go sit down and be like, well, I don't have anything to do now. and anybody who's a mom and anybody who's a homeschooler knows that there is always something to do. But unless I have everything written down, there's no order, there's no list, there's no running list of things to do. If there is something I have to do that is time sensitive, I continuously tell myself about it so that it commits to the long-term memory. So oftentimes I worry myself sick about this one thing that I know I'm gonna forget. And that's a lifetime of dealing with this portion of dyslexia that I hadn't quite mastered for myself. Because in theory, I can write everything down and manage things for my children, but carrying around a yellow pad of paper for myself, isn't really the best policy. When you have 4 kids and you're just doing things, you can't really have that. And that is what life is like for dyslexics. You need this list, not just like, oh, I know it's on my list. This is like every day you need this list to function. So as far as the kids are concerned, we have a list of things for them to do for school every day. We've tried all the different things. We've tried Homeschool Planet for myself and for them. They have Surfaces, Microsoft Surfaces that they can access Homeschool Planet. They can use our computers to access Homeschool Planet. That really doesn't work, hasn't worked for them. The thing that has worked for my oldest son is just a sheet of paper with things for him to do on it. Their checklists for the day, for their daily chores, are taped onto the back of a clipboard in which their brain resides. I know that sounds silly, but when your brain, as a dyslexic, doesn't function the way that normal society does, meaning rapid recall constantly, you being able to produce something and a task and this and that and this and that, you have to have your brain somewhere. So we've created a clipboard system for our children, and I'll show you that to you in a different video, but it's got their chores on it. It has this multiplication chart on it. It has some things like this is evens and odds. Just one whole side of the clipboard is information, just random information that really as adults we should have learned and know, and as children we're expected to know, that maybe isn't readily accessible for our, okay, sorry, I had a little one in here with me who needed Play-Doh. So processes and lists, it's important. I think the way that I explain it to some people is you have a kid that you are going to constantly be teaching to essentially tie his shoes all the time. So, you know, when you learn the process of tying your shoes, you learn one loop and then one loop and then in and around and pull. And when we talk about dyslexic kids and their memory and ordering and processing and analysis of things, we have to remember that thought process of ordering, analysis, memory, and all those different things apply to everything, not just reading, not just academics. That's everything. So when we talk about creating processes and lists for our kids, that's for things like cleaning the house, their daily chores, their responsibilities for their own physical body. When you wake up, you need to brush your teeth, or shower, brush your teeth, clean your ears, clip your toenails, clip your fingernails, very specific lists of things to do. And when you have a kid that has those things, they will eventually learn it from physical memory. They physically do these same things every day. You have to be very careful with little kids that have dyslexia that you don't teach these things to, because intuitively they don't pick them up. If they have a personality that is super clean, they are going to want to get in the shower and know to get in the shower every single morning. But if you don't, and you don't teach these things to your children through lists and checklists and procedures and things like that, they're not going to intuitively pick it up. A lot of things happen in kids that have ADHD. I have one that has ADHD. Actually, his diagnosis is ADHD because that's the umbrella diagnosis, but he is inattentive. He is not hyperactive. So for us, we deal with the inattentive, meaning that oftentimes I'm reminding him constantly to shower and do all those different things. So that happens a lot with dyslexic kids too. So processes and lists, you this is not something that will get better. This is not something that they will just, one day, they will learn how to do these things. I will say they will eventually create a process of their own to function in life. Everybody does. Everybody does. But it's your responsibility to give them many different processes for them to find out what works for them. So for me, I was able to have those processes of cleaning and how to take care of myself and how to cook and how to follow a recipe. And even to this day, I hate following a recipe. I cook far better if I don't follow a recipe, but I was taught, and I was taught the process of cooking, was taught the process of doing chores and things like that. So when we teach our kids the processes, just remember with our dyslexic kids, they need to be written down. And in those situations, I'll go back to what I said before, adjust your expectations. And so when you have a child with dyslexia, decoding whether they're wanting to do it, they're not wanting to do it, and so they're not, or they have really become unable to remember the steps you gave them, that's when you need to adjust your expectations and say, I'm going to write you a list, and I want you to go from the top to the bottom. Now, don't adjust what you expect from them in the form of completion. Adjust your expectations of how it's going to get accomplished. So I think that's it.